Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is this is a quick little video on some reading materials I thought you might be interested in, and things that have helped me on my own journey into the mystics and the magics, especially necromancy, um, Satanism, stuff like that. Hello, Angela, and good morning. So I wanted to literally put some of these reading materials out and just kind of show you my thought process, my thought forms upon each and every one of these. Now I'm going to start off with necromancy. The first book that I would recommend to you is a book called Necromancy: The Forbidden Art by Lucien Raffacal. Okay, this guy is, I've been following his career for a while now, and when it comes to necromancy, he is one of the purest, dedicated practitioners I've ever seen in that tradition. His understanding of the texts, of the methods utilized, is completely sincere. A very well written book, and he not only gives the historical attributes, but he also shows you methods upon which you can do to better your own practice within the magical art known as necromancy. Very, very good book. The next is a 2-book series, and it's by Sorceress Cagliostro, the Necromancer, and they're called the Blood Sorcery Bible, volumes 1 and 2. Okay, so they look just like this, and I'll even bring up the other one. Volume 1, Volume 2. Now you notice Volume 2 is a lot thicker than Volume 1. Now I'm currently reading this book right now, and well, the second part, because I've already read the first. The first one talks a lot about necromancy and what necromancers are capable of. It also gives talk of at least 20 to 30 pages just on what is known as bloodletting and the proper locations and the proper techniques to heal yourself and to make yourself stronger. But at the same time, she gives a lot of clear and precise information upon necromancy from a scientific point of view. And the thing I like about Sorceress Cagliostro is the fact that she actually goes into a lot of explanations on how she became associated with necromancy, how she got attracted to death energies, how she became a mortician, how she started her order, her temple, her coven, and how she got into basically the darkest of arts. And what I like about her work the most is the fact that she goes into details about, and she gives these little, I guess you can say, these boxed analogies, kind of breaking things down, and it's very simple to understand. Her methods of utilizing the blood taplets, or tablets, I should say, and how they can be frozen, how they can be magnetized, stimulated, and utilized within blood sorcery itself is amazing. Her version, her unique perspective on divination, specifically chiromancy, is amazing. I've only known one, at least two others in my career as a necromancer and a practicing necromancer, is two other individuals besides her. There is Aragni, or Baron Aragni, I should say. She and her husband are out of South Africa. And you can find them right here on YouTube, but also Facebook. Very, very impressive necromancers. They are dedicated. They are on top of the world. Literally, they are, in my opinion, classified as some of the top necromancers out there. Besides Sorceress Cagliostro and Baron and Baroness Aragni, I recommend Lucian Raphael. Those are the top 3 necromancers that I would recommend to you. And I just gave you not only 2 of their works, 2 out of the 3 works by them, but also a third to look into. Now, as for volume 2, this is the 5th time that I've gone through this book. And she gives a lot of definitions. She goes into a lot of things about void working. She goes into a lot of things about the disincarnate, utilizing your imagination, going into things like picturing from the time your loved one or your friend passes away, to being in that coffin, to being put on, into a vehicle, to going to a cemetery, being pulled out of that in a casket, set on a thing that's, a machine, a mechanism, and being lowered down. How to get in touch with these Da'ath energies. And what's interesting about this, in my opinion, is not only does she talk about this in volume 2, but she also gets into demonolatry. She gets into spiritualism. She gets into things like curses and hexes. And she goes into a huge amount of information that is completely mind-blowing of someone who's been doing this stuff for over 40 years. And she also does broadcasts on YouTube, which I recommend that you listen to because it is spectacular. Now, one of the other sources of information that I would recommend is Quimbanda, the Cult of the Red and Black Flame book by I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce his name right, but it's Danilo Capini. Okay. That is true, especially around the Nile, the culture of the Yoruba people, for an example. The Yoruba people were the first to settle into Africa, especially that of the northern portion of Africa. I believe it's now what is known as Cairo, if I remember correctly. It's very, very unique outlook on necromancy. Their roots into the magical arts, especially that of voodooism and hoodooism. All that stuff basically has come from there, and through the slave trade went through the French Niles, the English channels, all the way up into Hades, Haiti, Jamaica, South America, all the way up into North America. Today we have multiple practices of voodooism and different traditions and stuff, which was actually splinter cells off them, and then you got splinter cells off them, going into things such as Santa Morte, Quimbanda, Ambanda, Santa Morte, La Santa Morte, and Santeria, Pelo Mayambi, and such like that. I mean, you got different traditions that have splintered off from the Yoruba people themselves, and it is spectacular, their history, how they came to be, how these traditions literally, came into light and into practice, and how they went from being forced into, for an example, the slave trade, and turning against their masters and becoming guerrillas, for an example. And this is just hoodooism in Haiti, okay, that I'm talking about here, and how they made them wish they were never born. And I mean, just the stories and the mythology and the history of it is, I mean, it's enough to want you to delve right back in and read it all over again. I mean, that may just be me because I'm a career black magician, but still, I mean, it is something that is fascinating, and it goes along with these traditions. It's their history, and much like any tradition, there's a rich formula of or formulae of history out there, of knowledge, of the culture, how these things came to be, and such. And I mean, it's amazing. And this is what this book looks like. Okay, very very good book. And I'm not the only one who's actually posted about this book, which is kind of cool. You have things like, for example, on page 74, the kingdoms of Exu, Belial, Leviathan, Beelzebub, and Lucifer. The elements. Belial represents earth, Leviathan, water, Beelzebub, air, Lucifer, fire. And then you can go down into what is known as the Maiar. What do they call that? The Maya Aura. Okay, all be going down, all before going down into the seven kingdoms, which is the crossroads, the crosses, woods, the graveyards, the souls, the Lear, and the beach. And I mean, it's just spectacular. The drawings. I mean, you wouldn't think that Quimbanda would have anything to do with demonolatry. You wouldn't think that it would have anything to do with anything outside of, say, for example, the Loa, or the spelled Loa or Lwa. Okay, sometimes spelled with an E instead of an A, depending on the tradition and the location. But here it is. I mean, it's right here. I mean, even in Santeria, you have gods similar to called the. You have people, lords or the intermediaries known as the Ugan, which are similar to the Loa. So you see, there are similarities between traditions. There are similarities between the practices. So I mean, when you get into different things and you start seeing how there's the light versus the darkness or the shadow, say for example, good versus evil, or what is classified as them. In my opinion, in my experience, by going above them and working with them, there really is no such thing as good versus evil, no black and white. Magic is just magic, plain and simple. But that's just my perspective on it. And from what I understand from some friends and acquaintances, I'm not the only one who's come to realize that. But I do recommend this book, and I'm going to show you some stuff out of it real fast. And I mean, a lot of the prayers and stuff in here are in Spanish, but I want you to see some stuff here. Okay, notice right here. Okay, that's the world and where these things are actually practiced. And of the deities, for an example, in this case, it is the illustration that exemplifies the movement of Exu Morikigo in the material world. And you even have the sigils that you can utilize, much like the sigils in the Necromyicon by Simon, okay, or that of demonolatry. And I mean, you can even go back. Let me go back here to say, for an example, let's go into Lucifer. All right, here. Again, Sigil of Lucifer. Amazing, right? And then on this side, you also have the Exu Lucifer expressing the fullness of his powers. Look at that. Spectacular. Where have we seen this sigil before? You can Google it. You'll see a lot of different variations of that sigil between witchcraft and shamanism, paganism even, but also quimbanda and demonolatry. So, I mean, seeing all this just in here, as you can see, I've read this book quite a bit, and I'm currently reading it as well, along with the Blood Sorcery Bible, Volume 2. Very spectacular. Now, let's get into Satanism. Okay. Satanism, two of the books that I would recommend to you are by Magister Satanito. Okay. And they're called the Satanic Oracles, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Now, think of this as more as a, well, much like the 21 Satanic Points or the 13 Laws of the Brotherhood of Satan, you know, the 11 Doctrines of Luciferian, you know, the adversarial doctrines, going into, say, for example, the 9 Satanic Statements, you know, perhaps the Book of Lucifer or the Book of Satan, for that matter, out of Anton Szandor LaVey's Bible. You know, there's a lot of information, and in this case, it puts forth literal. It's almost like a very good sized amount of prayer. And at the very end of Volume 2, there's actually a ritual that you can perform. In this case, I'm going to read a little bit of Volume 1 here. And I want you to see what I mean by this. Why it kind of sounds like a prayer, but it's more of a spiritual doctrine, if you will, and much of a saint, you know, in the saying of kind of like a formulae for a written document of what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Think of it as being putting forth rules and regulations type thing. That's basically what it, you know, the way I look at it. But it's very good, and I recommend them. For an example, it's numbered, so you got like 1 through 24. Okay, very short things. Number 1, all hail Satan. Number 2, the master with 1,000 names. The master without a name. The master that is beyond a name. 3, cast off your speculations of that verse versus this. It never existed. 4, all is one. 5, there is no war. 6, there is no peace. 7, I needed only to gaze down upon you all once in order to see to truly see. 8, I am not their God. They only pretend. 9, their God is duality. 10, now come now, you fools, worship it. 11, raise your chalices of sacrificial wine. 12, make a toast to your God. And I can go on from there. You can see where it's almost like a prayer, but it's also more of a statement. It is more of a formulae of almost like a doctrine type thing, and how it's set up. Very well done. Very well managed within a reading. And I mean, like I said, I recommend these books to you. These books were actually done by the hierarchy of the Cathedral of the Black Goat, which is very, very awesome. Now, the next book that I recommend is this one here, and it's called Tentatio Diabolis. And this is for any of you who wish to have your own order, your own temple, or perhaps simply start a coven. Okay, especially from a satanic point of view. Now, in this case, you have three books in one. Number one, the Devil's Bible. Number two, you have the Devil's Disciple. And number three, you have the Devil's Coven. Okay. The first book, the Devil's Bible, speaks more of a philosophical attribute with the El Jawah types it's got a 3-day annotation era. It talks a lot about what Satanism really is and not what most of these people who claim to be Satanists think it is, because they only have a limited point of view. It's like, okay, I've read the Satanic Bible by Anton Szandor LaVey. I know everything there is to know. No. It's about evolution. It is about constantly learning. It is about constantly bettering yourself. And the Devil's Bible is just that. It puts forth a very good standpoint. And it also has and includes the prayer to Lucifer and the prayer to Satan himself, asking for strength to overcome the challenges that you as the individual need to overcome. Okay? Protection from your enemies, but to stick up for yourself through your own power, which he puts in front of you. You got to remember that Satan and Lucifer challenges you. They want you to be forged of steel, okay? Which is awesome. And the Devil's Bible is something that I would really recommend by Myrmidon Pontifex Maximus, okay? Now, the Devil's Disciple, on the other hand, this book is more of a philosophical aspects, kind of like a how-to manual to actually start and run and maintain an order, a temple, or a coven. Okay. And then you have the third one, which is the Devil's Coven. And the Devil's Coven is kind of like a short little book. And it talks about the proper use of the grimoires that were put forth and the 9 principles of the Pontifex Coven leader. Kind of like putting regulations, communal living, the coven occupation, assignments, the Devil's Loaf, the June 21st ritual, and stuff like that. I mean, it's very, very good. It not only puts forth the attributes of, okay, here's a Bible that you can go by, but it's all okay. You've also grown enough that you want to run your order. So here is a method that you can utilize to start a coven or an order, a temple, whatever, even a church, and maintain it. But it also gives you 2 different attributes here. And as Angela can vouch for, in the Order of the Black Thorn, there are 2 ways to move up in rank, and it's beneficial to you as the member. Okay? Number 1, it is a place where you feel that you belong. Okay? It's a place where you can feel welcomed because it's all about knowledge. It's all about education. Okay? It's about your personal growth. But at the same time, it also gives you something to work for or towards. Okay? And this book here will actually show you that aspect. So I do recommend you to do that, to get into that book. The next one is by Vokalakis Aureax. Very good book. And it's called the Book of the Divine Black Flame of Satan. And they actually just came out with a new book called The Bible of the Divine Black Flame of Satan. So, and this one here is going to have all of this stuff put into it from what I was told, which is spectacular. I mean, everything, all these books just in one book. I mean, these guys are constantly making it better. They're constantly improving it. And it looks like this. This one here is 7 books in one. It's the first 7 books. And what's interesting about this one here is it gives a kind of an idea of what Satanism really is about. And it's not about duality. It is not about hypocrisy. It's it shows a clear understanding of responsibility, growth, taking charge of your life. But there's also a couple of rituals that is in it near the end, and it's very very interesting for a read. It was very well written, very well maintained, and the reason I saved this one for second to last is because of the fact that it gives a clear psychological insight into Satanism in general. Okay, for an example, and I want to read something here out of here, and this is actually chapter 1, and it says, for centuries, Satanism has been defined, redefined, and repackaged many times. Before the mid 1900 CE, Satanism was always viewed as a theistic practice with the belief in a literal devil, demons, black magic, witchcraft, conjurings, and all of the things that naturally come to mind when someone hears the term Satanism. When Anton Zandalove created the Church of Satan in 1966, things began to change. A newer philosophical perspective of Satanism was born. The Satanic Bible, released in 1969 and written by Anton Zandalove, not only laid down a practical philosophy in the first half of the book, but left the second part of it open to the theory and practice of lesser, manipulative, and greater ceremonial magic. For the first 14 years or so of the Church of Satan's existence, it continued in a more honest satanic fashion. Around 1975, the Magister Templi IV in the Church of Satan, known as Michael A. Aquino, started to notice some major contradictions and fallacies within the overall view of the Church of Satan. Okay, and it goes on from there and goes down through the history a little bit. Now, just from what I read, I can tell you, even through my own research, okay, through my own research, there has been clubs dating back as far as the 17th century, if not the 16th century, that are secret societies. The Hellfire Club is just to name one of them. You know, rich conglomerates in the old world used to huddle around and perform black masses. Okay, the possession of the nuns of Loudun, for not sure if I pronounced that right, but it's the possession of the nuns of Loudun, which is out of the French Quarter. Okay, prime example. Okay, and these just date back a couple different, about 2 centuries away. Technically just 1 century, really. But you see my point. This is just 18th century, just what I mentioned, between the 18th and the 19th centuries. Sorceress Cagliostro, Angela. Yeah, I'll send that to you, so you can actually look into it yourself. I do recommend her books, though. Very, very good. So you can see why I recommend The Divine Black Flame of Satan, but also Tentatio Diabolus and the Satanic Oracles. It literally is putting forth doctrines. It's literally putting forth a physical and spiritual foundation. Okay. And this applies to any foundation of spiritual workings. Now, the last book on my list here is called Phosphorus. Looks like this. Okay. Now, this book here is more psychological. It is more philosophical in nature. It much in the same way as another book that I have that's in on the dresser on witchcraft, on white and black witchcraft practices that Brujo Carlos put forth in one of his videos. I ended up getting my hands on it. And this book is spectacular. I mean, it's psychological, it's philosophical. It literally gives you a new perspective on the tradition of witchcraft and the practice and the theories of witchcraft itself. No matter if it's Satanism, witchcraft, shamanism, voodooism, hoodooism, it's that psychological and philosophical point of view that opens up your perspective, and you learn to rise above a lot of things, and it's like somebody just pulls the veil back. Okay. And Phosphoros was actually written back in 2013, if I remember correctly. Yeah, the translated from the Finnish Phosphoros in 2013. Second edition, published in Finnish language, was not only 2003, 2005, again in 2007 to 2008, and then again in 2012. But the first English, which is this one here, was basically translated in 2013. So this book's been out for a little while. You can get your hands on it if you can. Very, very good book. And if you're interested in higher witchcraft or high witchcraft, high magic, I would recommend it, because this book literally will open up your mind. It will blow your mind and show you a whole nother understanding of magic and the theory and the practice and everything that goes along with it. Because a lot of things within magic are not only psychological, they're emotional, they're physical, they're draining, okay? And this book here is one of those books that will blow your mind. It'll get you thinking in a whole new thought form. So if you can get your hands on these, I would highly recommend it. Go out and get your learning curve on. Plain and simple. All right. Feel free to message me. Feel free to ask questions. I'll always answer. And until next time, this Dark Sorcerer is out.